Nothing contained in this recording is intended to encourage the use of illegal substances. This recording represents only the opinions of the hosts and their guests and should not be taken as medical or legal advice. In no way does listening, reading, corresponding, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient or legal relationship. The content here is intended to share thoughts and opinions to foster constructive discussion. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions concerning psychedelics. The views expressed by hosts and guests on this recording are not necessarily the views of Psychedelia or any other company with which the hosts and guests are associated.
Hello, fellow travelers. My name is Los Arias. I'm the CEO of Green Horizons, which is a large vertically integrated cannabis enterprise in the Coachella Valley in partnership with Tommy Hilfiger. And I am also a principal at Psychedelics Now.
Hey there. Hey Los. Hey, Jeff. This is your co-host, Radhi Shah. I'm a foreign attorney at Zuber Lawler, specializing in technology law and in protecting IP rights. My work entails working closely with plant medicine and biomolecular technology. So, hey, travelers, today's episode is centered around psychedelic-assisted therapy, and we have invited a special guest to walk us through the various therapeutic techniques in this field. So, psychedelic therapy, which is sometimes referred to as psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, or you may also have heard the term PAP, which is a type of psychiatric practice that involves ingesting a psychedelic substance as a part of your psychotherapeutic process. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest, Kyle Buller. He earned his BA in Transpersonal Psychology from Burlington College, where he focused on studying the healing potential of non-ordinary states of consciousness by exploring shamanism, Reiki, which is a form of Japanese alternate medicine involving the laying on of palms or hands to promote physical and or emotional healing. Local medicine and plant medicine, holotropic and dream shadow transpersonal breathwork. He has also earned his MS in clinical mental health counseling with an emphasis on somatic psychology. Kyle's clinical background in mental health consists of working with at-risk teenagers in crisis and with individuals experiencing an early episode of psychosis and providing counseling to undergraduate or graduate students in a university setting. So welcome, Kyle. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us, Kyle. We're going to dive right into our questions here.
Cool.
Okay. First question from me. How did you first get involved in psychedelics? What made you dive into this subject matter?
I'll try to turn the long story short. Basically, I came across meditation when I was 15. I was reading a book called Snowboarding to Nirvana, and it was about this snowboarder who went over to Nepal, ran into a monk, and that was really kind of like my first introduction to meditation, and started to kind of incorporate some of those techniques in my life. And then about a year later, I kind of make a little joke that I snowboarded to Nirvana. I got into a pretty serious snowboarding accident that almost took my life. Ended up rupturing my spleen and had massive internal bleeding. The doctor said if I came in 5 or 10 minutes later, I would have been pronounced dead on arrival. And that was a very profound experience to go through. I remember when I was laying in the CAT scan machine dying, the doctors kept telling me not to fall asleep. And there was a voice that came over me and told me I was going home and I was going back to the stars where we all come from. And this physical life was going to cease to exist, but I would continue onward. And the more that I'd struggled with it, the harder the transition would be, and to relax and let go. And so coming back from that was really challenging at the age of 16. I kind of came back and said, what the hell is going on here in the world? So I rode that high for a bit. You have a question, Jeff? Or?
No. I was just going to say my snowboarding experience was much different than yours. I went for a day. It was terrible. Spent most of the time on my backside, and there was no significant chance for any injury. You should try my strategy. Much safer.
I need to learn some safer snowboarding techniques, I guess.
There you go.
But yeah, I kind of rode the high for a bit and was really thankful that I was alive, but then fell into a pretty deep, heavy existential crisis, depression. And there was a part of me that really wanted to go back to that feeling of that home feeling that I felt as I was drifting off. And so that really led me to just kind of want to escape reality most of the time. It was really hard to feel embodied and be here. So around 19, I think I had my first experience with psilocybin, and I think I had one previous experience. It was more of a low dose. Definitely did not prepare me for this. But I started to relive my near-death experience in this psilocybin experience. And it helped me to recontextualize some of the psychospiritual trauma that I had. And I came out of that experience just asking the question, how could I ingest something that grows from the earth that could replicate or reproduce a near-death-like experience? And I didn't know anything about the research. I didn't know anything about what was going on with psilocybin for near-death anxiety for cancer patients. I was just a total naive teenager. But that sent me down the route to really want to investigate this in more of a like a scientific way. So just started to dig up a bunch of books. The book that I actually stumbled across was Dr. Rick Strassman's DMT, the Spirit Molecule. And I didn't pick it up because it had to do with psychedelics. I picked it up because in the subtitle it said research in near-death experiences. And I forget the full title there, but that's what caught my eye. And that opened me up to exploring psychedelics in a more intellectual way. And so that's really where this path started. And there's a bunch of other series of events, but that ultimately led me down the path to do an undergrad in transpersonal psychology, with the idea that psychedelic psychotherapy isn't here yet, but maybe it will be here in the future, and I'm going to try to get ready for it because it's what I want to dedicate my life to.
Mm-hmm.
That is fascinating. And I've never personally talked to someone who has had a near-death experience, and that would freak me out here. I'm 48 years old. I don't know how my 16-year-old overworked mind would have processed that type of experience.
It was a lot.
Oh, brother, really inspiring. And, it sounds like the near-death experience really influenced and sort of guided your path, man. So it's just received and acknowledged, brother. Thank you for sharing that. And, you've transitioned now also to, being a leader and co-founder at Psychedelics today. Can you talk to us a little bit about, the vision there and what you guys are looking to put into the world with that company?
Yeah, this company really started off as a passion project between Joe Moore and myself. We got together through the connections through our breathwork teachers, Lenny and Elizabeth Gibson. They just said, you guys have similar interests, both interested in psychedelics, snowboarding, breathwork. You guys should connect. And really, it started off as a passion project just to kind of continue our teachers' lineage to some degree, to want to talk more about breathwork, the work of Dr. Stanislav Grof. And it's really grown since then. And so we've, really focusing on education. And where I sit at Psychedelics today is the director of education and training. And I like to say that my mission here is to create some psychedelic literacy in the world, and especially in the world of wellness practitioners, whether you're a licensed practitioner, doctor, therapist, or if people are coaches. And doing any sort of work with clients. So that's really my vision right now at Psychedelics today, is to educate everybody and create some psychedelic literacy as this field starts to become more mainstream accepted. I mean, more and more people are starting to turn on to psychedelics or become interested in it, and just really even curious how it's going to boom with this new Michael Pollan documentary that's coming out on Netflix, How to Change Your Mind. So we need to prepare.
Yeah, dude. Wow, man. Awesome. And recently at Psychedelics today, to that end, friend, you guys put out this Vital course that has been wildly successful and well received. Can you tell us a little bit more about that specifically?
Yeah, so we've been running education since about 2017. So we started Psychedelics Today in 2016 with the podcast, which is educational in itself. But as we started to grow this passion project, we realized, this is pretty expensive, and maybe we'll put on some courses. So we launched a course called Navigating Psychedelics, Lessons on Self-Care and Integration, with the idea of what type of course did we need when we were younger. So it was really kind of targeted towards, I guess, consumers. Like, people weren't having these conversations around integration, self-care. Around that time, it was kind of a hot topic, and there weren't a lot of resources. So we were really trying to have interviews and help to really understand this landscape of what does integration mean, and why is integration important in the psychedelic experience. And that slowly grew into more of a clinician and therapist oriented course. And it's always been our dream to have a much longer, in-depth program, something kind of modeling our breathwork training where it's experiential and didactic. And so we had, I had a vision for about like a 2-year program, kind of mimicking our breathwork training, and the pandemic hit. And so we made a little bit of a pivot to do some online training. And so Vital is a 12-month training in harm reduction, psychedelic integration, and really helping to develop those skills for sitting and guiding people. We're not able to license a psychedelic therapist because it's not a legal profession at the moment, unless you're doing something like ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, or if you're in a place like Oregon that is legalizing psilocybin service centers in 2023. But that comes with its own state licensure. So what we're really trying to do with this program, again, is to kind of create some psychedelic literacy and prepare all these fields to deal with psychedelics. Because I know in my practice, people that may not always do a lot of research on me, they come in and say, "Hey, like, have you ever heard of psilocybin? Like, I just came across microdosing, and I'm curious." And so we know more and more people are starting to become interested. And are wellness professionals prepared for this? Do they know how to have the conversations? Or are they literate in it? And so that's a big goal of ours, and to help the practitioners feel confident in helping clients integrate their experiences as well.
Wow. Received. I mean, it's incredible, man. Education is the core of all of it, right? So thank you for leading the way there. And on the Vital course, just to stay there for a second, in terms of like, curriculum, barrier to entry, how much does it cost? How do you guys go about that and sort of offer that to the community?
Yeah, so a lot of the training programs out there right now are very geared towards clinicians and therapists and licensed professionals. And we're trying to envision, what does the future look like in 5 to 10, 15, 20 years. And I mean, we could just look at what Oregon's doing, where their requirements to participate as a facilitator in a psilocybin service center is you need to be 21 years or older, a high school diploma, and to complete a 120-hour program plus a 40-hour practicum experience. And so this is also opening the avenue for non-licensed professionals to get involved. And so our goal here was to really be a little bit more inclusive and open it up to people just that are outside of a license. So again, wellness coaches, we have yoga practitioners that are working with clients. We even have some journalists that just want to have more of a high level education so that they feel more competent in their reporting in psychedelics and wanting to enter into this field. So it's broken up into 5 different modules. The first module really goes over the history from the indigenous perspectives and uses up to the modern research. We just started our module 2 about 2 weeks ago. And that's really examining the legality of psychedelic therapy and an overview of ethics and the psychedelic therapy. So looking at MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD, and we'll have Dr. Michael Mithofer and Annie Mithofer teach that. We'll look at psilocybin for depression. We'll explore cannabis-assisted therapies. So examining the various use cases for psychedelics for clinical indications. And then the third module is really focused on the experience. So we've baked in a certain amount of retreats. I think we have 6 retreats this year, 2 in Colorado, 1 in Amsterdam, 1 in Jamaica, and 1 in Costa Rica. And that will range from cannabis assisted kind of practices to breath work and to legal psilocybin experiences outside of the country. With the idea of having your own experience, I think is very important if you're going to enter into this space, but also part of it is really kind of doing your own work. And so getting people engaged in their own inner process, getting to know themselves, because, if people are going to be sitting for people in the future, getting to know yourself is really, really important. The fourth module looks more at kind of medical and psychological assessments. So looking at contraindications and doing any sort of kind of psych assessment to see if, this could possibly be a good fit for somebody. And then the fifth module module is on psychedelic integration. And so we'll break down what is psychedelic integration, different practices and techniques. And thankfully that happens after the retreat. So hopefully, the people will have a little bit of content to start working with. And then we also have a final project as well. And there's a few other things I've probably missed, like the experiential elective, but those are like, the main points there. And I think the price this year has been $12,000 for the year-long program. And the way that it's broken up is every Tuesday we invite a special guest in. They do a 2-hour webinar with a more interactive Q&A. And then we also break it out into breakout rooms throughout the week. So we have 7 study groups that we call them. And so we're able to break it down into smaller groups for more processing and discussion around the topics.
Brother, thank you. Wow, received. Well, that's what I got for you, man. I'll turn it over here to Jeff and Roddy. Let's keep this great conversation going.
Kyle, can you tell us our audience a little bit about somatic psychology and transpersonal counseling?
Yeah. I'll start with the transpersonal because that's where I began. Transpersonal psychology. Well, if you break down the word transpersonal, it means beyond the personal. And a lot of transpersonal psychology likes to examine phenomenon that regular science may not know really how to categorize or work with. So near-death experiences, that's a transpersonal experience. Meditation, psychedelics, dreams, really kind of anything outside of the personal to some degree, where we start to maybe tap into the collective unconscious and whatnot. So the way that I incorporate more of these transpersonal aspects into counseling is being able to explore dreams. Sometimes I bring a drum into my office and we'll do kind of drumming meditations or kind of shamanic journeys for those that resonate with that type of narrative and language. Another aspect of the transpersonal psychology that I seem to focus on is in the realm of spiritual emergency. So what happens when somebody has a very profound spiritual awakening that from a traditional Western perspective, it may look like psychosis or schizophrenia, and really helping to people work within their language and definitions around their experience. So transpersonal psychology is very broad. It encompasses a lot of different experiences. I mainly pull from the psychedelic and kind of shamanic worldview when I approach some of that stuff and the lineage of Stan Grof. And then, so it's kind of a funny trajectory. In my early years, I felt like I was way beyond myself. I was kind of floating out there in the ethers, and I feel like I needed transpersonal psychology to understand a lot of this phenomenon, like all these weird experiences I was having. I was like, I have no map here, and I need to develop a map. And then somatic psychology is really about the body. So it's body-oriented therapy. So for me, it's been a huge integration process, is being here in the body, especially with trauma. There's a lot of dissociation and detachment. You find that with people, especially with physical, emotional trauma, like detaching from the body. And so a lot of my work there is getting to understand and know the body, being able to sit with maybe certain physical sensations and anxieties, and starting to learn the language around our nervous system, learning how to regulate it.
Wow, so I am open to a whole new world here. Let's take a step back. So if I understand it correctly, is it similar to holotropic and dream shadow breathwork, what you just explained about transpersonal psychology, or is it different? And is Reiki a part of this as well?
Reiki is a part of transpersonal psychology. Yeah, there's so many types of experience. Like I would say, from the scientific worldview, anything that looks a little quote unquote woo-woo could be in the transpersonal. But transpersonal psychology is really trying to help to examine a lot of these techniques and experiences through a critical lens, and hopefully provide a little bit of validation to it, which I think psychedelic science is actually trying to bring into mainstream science a little bit, right? We have these really profound experiences and they're meaningful, right? People say that they've had very profound changes in their lives after these experiences. And, maybe from more of a mechanistic perspective, it's like, well, you took a substance that hit the 5-HT2A receptor, and, talk about serotonin receptors, and you could dismiss all the transpersonal experience there, where somebody feels like they've met God, or they, started to become one with the universe, right? And I think sometimes traditionally we'd write that off and say, well, that's a drug effect. And, you could see that in some biotech plays where they want to take out the psychedelic quality to the psychedelic experience, which I think is valid for some indications, right? I always say, if you had cluster headaches and, do you want to be tripping out all the time to try to treat that? So I think science tends to devalue a lot of spiritual experiences. So transpersonal psychology is really trying to be the bridge there and try to bridge that gap. Breathwork, for example, I think it's this interesting blend between transpersonal and somatic psychology, because it really involves the body. It's very physical. And for me, that's what turned me on to that technique, was that with psychedelics in my early years, I felt like I was so out of my body. There was a part of me that wanted to constantly leave and go back to this home that I felt when I was dying. And breathwork taught me, how do I bring that down and be in the body and actually process that trauma in a different way than trying to detach and dissociate from it. So breathwork is an interesting technique that I think blends the two worlds together. And the developer of holotropic breathwork, Dr. Stan Grof, he was one of the main theorists of transpersonal psychology, as one of the founders.
So do you incorporate psychedelics in this counseling or practice? Or
I only work with ketamine right now, since that's the one legal medicine. And, there's debates, I guess, amongst different communities, whether or not you want to call that a classical psychedelic. But I think if we break that word down, manifesting the psyche, mind manifesting, soul manifesting, people can have really profound experiences. And I would classify that as a psychedelic. I mean, traditionally it's classified as a dissociative anesthetic, but people do have transpersonal experiences with it, and it can be beneficial in that regard. So I work with ketamine, and also I will incorporate breathwork as well with some clients.
Are you looking forward to incorporating some of these other tools and substances when they do become legal and available?
I am. Yeah, I think having a lot of tools in the toolbox is really important. I think Joe always made this an analogy that I always appreciated. You can't clean the whole house with a Swiffer, right? Like, you need a lot of different. I mean, I guess maybe
those things are pretty effective. Has he tried?
Yeah, I guess you have a point there, but just
right.
But we need a lot of tools, right? Ketamine. I found that ketamine has been really great for some clients, but it's also a little short acting. And some people need a lot of repeated dosing, where, if we look at the science of psilocybin or say ayahuasca, it seems to have a little bit of a longer effect for some people. Yeah, I think we need all these tools. And I'm excited as the laws change and people become more accepting of this, because it's still taboo, right? I think those of us that are in this world are in a little bit of a bubble. But
absolutely. It's funny how I don't think of it as taboo at all. But if I'm talking to some of my friends, if I send a text with an article to a group chat, sometimes I'm shocked by the response at how dismissive they are about this stuff. Even if I'm sending them a link to a big study, and all of a sudden I realize, wow, the world is not there yet amongst the people who are actually looking at this thing very close. But one of the things we are running out of time, Kyle, but one of the things we were hoping we had some time to bring up in terms of getting this into the mainstream, and I bet you've heard about this, but the KPMG report, the recent KPMG report, which was very favorable, one of the big accounting firms coming forward and saying these things and presenting it as something that is going to be worth investment. That's something that's quite significant. Some of the things I just want to go over very quickly in the report. KPMG states in its report that with success in clinical trials for a range of mental disorders, psychedelics may soon move to the medical mainstream. It was just a very positive report that they put out, and something that, again, lends credibility and adds to the momentum to push this thing into the mainstream. And I'm not saying that there's no risks. I don't think many people are, but the way it's being looked at, it's almost like it has to disprove something that was never proven in terms of the dangers. So we should be wary, and we should proceed with caution. I mean, those are the watchwords of the day: proceed with caution. But at the same time, we're overcoming conclusions that were based on non-science. Just
a lot of propaganda.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the KPMG report was fantastic. And one of the things, and this is off the KPMG website, and this is how KPMG put it, psychedelic drugs are showing efficacy in clinical trials for a range of conditions from post-traumatic stress disorder to depression, with the market expected to grow to 6.8 billion by 2027. Psychedelics are attracting the attention of large biopharma companies looking to get in on a new growth area. For example, the drug MDMA in 2021 was shown to have significant benefits in the treatment of PTSD when used in combination with inpatient therapy. I think we've all heard about that study. I mean, just mind-blowing in terms of what these things are doing for anxiety, for depression, for addiction. Things that used to be very resistant proof it's showing a lot of efficacy, almost like miracle drugs. You don't want to use this in terms of trying to keep this a sober, science-based conversation, but it is mind-blowing. And to go on, as these drugs move from the medical fringes to the mainstream, they have attracted 1.8 billion in venture capital investment. Most big pharma companies have remained on the sidelines until the regulators give their approval for a variety of treatments. And that's right off the KPMG website with regard to this report. But if any of you fellow travelers have not seen or heard of this report, it is worth looking into, and it is accessible. You should take a look at it.
Wow, thank you, Jeff. And I think for me, there's a really clear action step here that we can take. Let's reach out to KPMG and set up a large scale ketamine transpersonal, right? Like, let's just get everybody here on the level, man. It's exciting to see an accounting firm of that stature put out that kind of energy. It's awesome.
Absolutely. We got to reach out to those, to the authors, to the two authors there, get them on this show.
You should, definitely.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable, and it's so hopeful. And then you see all these things, you see all these studies, you see the evidence that, again, not addictive, not very habit forming, especially considering some of the vices that are out there without much efficacy for anything. And you realize that it's just traditional misconceptions that are driving the law more so than the science. And it is frustrating, but it is also exciting at the same time to see us moving in a different direction. Kyle, any personal notes that you'd like to make for our audience before we sign off?
No, I just want to say thank you for having me. And if anybody wants to check out what we're doing at Psychedelics Today, you can do so at psychedelicstoday.com, get up to speed. And if this is a new topic, there's plenty of really great resources out there. And I think the more education that we have in this space, the better, because I think that's what we're really fighting up against is the taboo. And that's continuing and the stigma from the 60s. And the more that we can educate and understand that these substances are relatively safe, right? Physiologically, the only risk that there is at times is more the psychological risk, right?
Absolutely, the psychological, and that's real. And also some people will react to it differently. But in terms of the issues that other substances have, it's also, we're not dealing with, a perfect situation versus trying psychedelics. If someone's not using these tools to improve these conditions, they're using other tools. Sometimes they're self-medicating. What's the danger in that compared to the use of these psychedelics? And the thing is, obviously, I'm convinced, and we've got to do the studies and we've got to push it forward, and that's the direction we're going. But it is frustrating because it doesn't even seem like the things that are driving the law have much to do with the science. Very frustrating.
Yeah. And we're battling up against a lot of different crises, right? The mental health crisis, and we need new tools in psychiatry and psychology and counseling. If we haven't seen what happened in the past 2 years with the pandemic, most of my therapist friends are booked out and, have wait lists and people can't find therapists. And, we need new tools. And psychiatry hasn't had anything in decades, probably since Prozac.
Our brains were not designed and evolved to deal with modern stresses. We're made to run from tigers and chase dinner and all this constant barrage of stress and stimuli coming at us from every different direction that we're addicted to. We're addicted to phones. These tools seem to have as much efficacy as anything out there. You see the studies on addiction, and the efficacy rate is more than twice as much of the accepted medication that's currently on the market, with no more significant downsides than what they're using. And to not have that availability, in the study I'm talking about, I believe it was smoking cessation. It's not even close. But again, we're going in the right direction, so there's a reason to be positive. And I don't want to demonize anyone again, because I do think a lot of people are doing it for the right reasons, but it's just it's just poor decision making. It's just, again, very frustrating.
I heard at the MAPS conference back in 2013, they said, the science is always 50 years ahead of politics. That's how it feels.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep, I blame the 60s, but they were trying to help. But anyway, listen, Kyle, I think we're going to wrap this thing up. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's always great to talk to someone with boots on the ground, doing things and moving things forward in this space. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. Appreciate it.
You're so welcome. And fellow travelers, please don't forget to sign up for the magazine. Go to psychedelia.live. Keep coming back to the podcast, and we'll keep bringing great content like today. Thank you so much.
You'll also have Kyle's Psychedelic Today's information down on the bio for you to refer to. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.